All right, fellow team players, this is Bob and Joe. We're coming at you talking about the Detroit Lions. And it's been quite an up and down year for the Detroit Lions, mainly up towards the end of that season. And for any Lions fans out there, we're ecstatic. We are happy. We are finally seeing a team that we think is trending in the right direction. And there's a lot of good things that happened during this Lions season, and a lot of the talent that the Lions have tried to, package together for a long time, it's finally worked out this year. Now, if we take the whole season as if we just go through the whole season here, the beginning of the season, it was rough. The first 7 games of the season, I believe they went 1-6. And there were 2 really, really ugly games in there. One of them against New England, and you were questioning. You were saying to yourself, "Okay, what is this team? What is this team made out of?" Because in a couple of those games, particularly that first game against the Eagles, they were out of it. Then they came back in it, and you just saw something special. You just saw something special out of this team. And then the light flicked on, and, Dan Campbell and his boys, they were just firing on all cylinders from week 8 on. And I had never seen a Detroit Lions team galvanized in the way that they did. And when we were talking to our Detroit Lions guest, we were talking about the fact that this team was finally something that the city of Detroit wanted to see. This is a team that feeds off of energy. And this is a team that when you watch it, when it's doing really, really well, it starts to do better. And when it's doing, and you can particularly see this on defense. Now, on defense, they were basically bottom of the barrel the first 7 weeks of the season. Now, as the season went forward, they started to move from the bottom of the barrel to the 1/3 part of the bottom of the barrel. They're still not good. The defense is still not good, at least what we saw this year. But one of the bright spots of that defense is its young pass rushers. Its young pass rushers in Aidan, Hutchinson, and Houston. They have the ability to go after the quarterback. They have the ability to put pressure. They can finally, we all know that putting pressure on quarterbacks alleviates some of that pressure on the back end, because Detroit, for the longest time, particularly this past year, and every year before that, has not had a really stellar secondary or pass rush combination together to work, to help each other out. Because even when one is good, if they're overutilized, they can't work the best way that they know how. They're on the field too much. They're trying to make bigger plays, and when you try to make big splash plays, you tend to make more mistakes. Now, one of those things, when we speak about the defense and we speak about, how young those 2 players are, it you just think about it and you say, wow, there's so much room to grow, because now they have a coaching staff that seems to be the first coaching staff in a couple of years that actually cares about their players. And you can see this shift in the locker room too, where every week when they would win a game earlier in the season and midseason, it was a party. It was a party. Then they expected to win. And when you put into young players, and players that for the longest time have not won and have never been there, when you instill in them that we can win every week, that changes a culture. And when we talked about culture in some other episodes, speaking of the Lions culture, it's been a losing and quite frankly a loser culture in terms of the Detroit Lions for a long time. But now, feeding off the energy, feeding off what the players are giving each other and what the fans are giving them this season, although there were a lot of things that were wrong with it, this season in particular was one filled with hope for the Detroit Lions. And Joe, if you can speak a little bit about what you saw on offense that you thought was really good, and then maybe talk to us a little bit about, some of those struggles that they still have.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Lions did a lot of great things offensively throughout the year. And they kind of came in this year with the expectation saying the offense is going to need to take this team over and they're going to need to win. And the beginning part of the year, the expectation was Amon-Ra St. Brown and Swift, and basically Goff just don't throw interceptions. That was their model. And when you look at it, top 10 receiver, top 10 running back, it's a good starting point. It's a very good starting point. And not to mention one of the best offensive lines in football. So we go through the beginning part of the year. Swift goes down. Amon gets hurt too. What we going to do? We got this guy who was on Green Bay, who knew how to win the ball, doesn't fumble, and can run through a brick wall. We just got to give him the ball all the time. And then the Jamall Williams show started. And oh, is he a fun football player to watch. He is not necessarily going to be the Ecklers of the world where I'm just going to catch a swing pass and go do something fun with it. That's more Swift's brand of football. He is more like a little Henry. He is just going to blow you up and push behind this line and destroy stuff. And it is so fun watching what he did. He ended up breaking the team's rushing record for a single season and just kept chugging along. And a lot of that galvanization that you talked about was around him. And it is kind of unique when it's not around the quarterback. It's kind of refreshing, too, that there's other positions that matter in football. But when we saw Williams just take off and just go, yeah. I mean, he was just lights out. And for a guy who was expected to be the spell running back, maybe minimal short yardage usage, to give him the ball continuously and go, it was something he never really had a chance in his professional career before. But when he did, he took the ball and he ran with it. And he, in a sense, is encapsulating the entire Detroit story. I was looked down upon. No one really gave me respect, but I had a chance and I took it. And that really was the turning point for this offense and this team. Because the other part is, as they started possessing the ball more, they stopped trying to do these shootouts like they did in the beginning of the year, where it was just, we need to outscore you constantly. It was like, oh, ball possession could be a thing. We'll sit on the ball a little bit so our defense doesn't blow the game late. If we hold on to the ball longer, we're better. And the other thing that they did, which a front office move would say this is contrary to a team that's turning it back on, they traded one of their absolute best studs in Hutchinson. Hutchinson was a guy that this team was built around offensively. On most plays, he's their second best eligible weapon. And then they traded him, and then didn't miss a beat at all at the tight end position. Their production was essentially the same. Still getting the touchdown, still getting the yardage. And it's a testament to Dan Campbell having faith in the next tier of guy that he's developing to say, I can trade the guaranteed all-star that we have and have faith in the new guy. And that spun like that is a way that Detroit had not spun any of their real PR moves in the past. It was spun as like, I believe in this next guy, and we're going to make our team better now. And this draft is where it'll come out to play. And that was really something that was a thread of Dan Campbell getting a better grasp on as the team went on throughout the year. Realizing what we are and what we can become better at and what we're never going to get good at this year, guys. And why I'm going to specifically at the interior defensive linemen right now. Their interior defensive linemen never demanded a double team. And when you have the ability to part the seas of the middle of a defense and still have an extra blocker, either a center or one of the two guards, you can get on any single linebacker that you want on the planet. And essentially, Detroit recognized we ain't going to win that game. So in the second half of the year, what they started doing was they had them start shooting gaps. So saying that I'm not trying to push this lineman back. I'm not capable of pushing this guard back. I'm just going to try to shoot to the side. So if it's a pass play and I get a run on him, we'll put extra pressure on him. We'll try to get a sack. Given the fact that the majority NFL passes more than it runs, it's a safe bet. However, if you're shooting the left gap and the ball goes to the right gap, 15-yard run right at the middle, there's nothing your linebacker can do about it. So that was what they accepted. And again, when it works, you're getting sacks, you're making teams look bad. Aaron Rodgers hates you. But when you're playing someone who's like, okay, I'm just going to hand the ball off on the RPO instead of holding it forever, it works really bad. But Aaron Rodgers' ego got in the way. Detroit beat the Packers twice, and they went 5-1 in the division. The Detroit Lions went 5-1 in the division. There is so much good things that they figured out moving forward, and it's a testament to their coaching staff that when we play a team twice, we beat them twice. And my favorite part of the Detroit Lions, if we win and make the playoffs, great. But Green Bay's not making the playoffs. We're winning or Green Bay's losing. That's how this game's ending. That's what Dan Campbell said addressing his team in the final game of the season when they lost their last playoff slot because Seattle won earlier in the day. And that's a mentality that Detroit never really has had in basically my lifetime, where they can dictate in a positive way, this is what's going to happen to the face of the league. Detroit is by far my favorite team moving forward that has stepped up. They have built their team the correct way in the trenches, particularly the offensive trenches. They need to fix the interior defensive, but there is so much positivity, and it's all starting from creating a culture of realism. It wasn't saying, hey, the past didn't exist. It's like the one pride was broken for a long time, but we're going to rebuild it right now. And it's not going to be easy, and it's going to be ugly at times, but we're going to do it. And that's exactly an example you were talking about earlier, Bob. We're no longer partying after wins because we're expecting wins. So, Bob, why don't you bring this one home for the review of the 2022 Detroit Lions?
One of the things that I think is unique about the Lions is that they're doing a lot of things with a lot of players that people have cast off and people didn't think were valuable or any good, and just letting them do their thing and playing, and the coaches believe in their players. And I think the most important thing about the Detroit Lions, at least this year, is that they had that belief as in their coaching staff that I'm going to bring out the best in my players, bring out the best in myself. And it worked, because when you looked at the Detroit Lions last year, they weren't that good. You know, it's a similar team. And you come back this year and all of a sudden, you know, you've got an electric guy in the pass rush. You've got, you know, that togetherness, and you're just like, wow, this was a different season, at least in that second half of the season. I don't think it's going to happen again. I hope it does, but I will never see the Detroit Lions rattle off 7 straight wins in a row like they did at the end of the season. Now, I mean, that was just insanity every week coming back and saying, you know, Detroit won again. You just never thought that was going to happen again. And one of the reasons I think that you spoke to it earlier is their coaching staff knew that they had to change things, and they knew they had to fit their player personnel. Instead of going out there and getting other players, they're going and they're changing the players that they have. And not a lot of teams recognize that fact, even when you're down dirty, that, you know, you've got a chance. And I think that all the Detroit Lions need is just one chance.